Hello class and welcome to chapter 7. In this chapter we're going to be talking about strategies. A corporate strategy refers to the overall plan and set of direction that the senior management has designed for the entire corporation. You can either focus on profit, you can focus on stability, you can focus on turning the company around. These are three different directions that your strategy can go into. We call those directional strategies. You can see there's three of them right here: growth, stability, and retrenchment. If you look inside each of these boxes, you can see various strategies that fit within an overall category. So the growth category is focused on growing the business, growing its revenue, trying to bring in more customers, try to sell more products. It's focused on growth. Stability is focused more so on keeping the company stable, keeping the status quo going, whatever that may be. If the company is growing at a 5% rate, it's focused on keeping that 5% rate of growth there. Retrenchment is focused on turning the company around. These are strategies that a company may employ when it's facing a downturn in revenue, when it's facing a loss of profits, or the very business itself may be in threat or danger. So we're going to talk about each of the strategies that fit within these three categories. So first, let's discuss growth strategies. Here are two growth strategies that a company may employ, either a merger or an acquisition. A merger is when two companies come together. They agree to jointly come together and become one organization. Oftentimes this is done with an exchange of stocks between the two companies. At the end of the day, there's only one company that exists after that merger takes place. An acquisition, while similar to a merger, is a bit different. This is when one company is actually buying another company. So at the end of the day, there's one company, absolutely, but there's definitely a dominant organization that's at play, and there's an organization that's not dominant that will eventually be dissolved or disappear altogether. With growth strategies, we have two different categories. You can call concentration strategies, and the other one is called diversification strategies. Underneath concentration strategies, you have two different approaches. You have vertical growth and horizontal growth. We'll talk about each of those in a moment. Under diversification, you have concentric growth, and then you have conglomerate growth, and we'll talk about those in just a few slides. So let's get started by talking about the vertical growth. So vertical growth, we're actually talking about the supply chain that a company operates within. So supply chain is every company that's involved in making the product or services that is ultimately sold to the company, to the customer. So I'd say, for example, automobiles. Well, you have to have somebody who mines the steel and the iron ore so that the cars can be made. You have someone who puts together all the parts, the engine, the motor, the tires. They assemble the car all together. You have someone who then transports the cars from one location to another, or once it's finished being made, it transports it to the dealership. Then you have the dealership what actually sells the car, and then you have the end customer who comes in and buys the car. So you have all these different entities that are involved in the supply chain or the manufacturing of the product, all the way to the end point where the product is sold to the customer. Vertical growth refers to growing within that supply chain. So you could either grow up the supply chain, or you could grow down the supply chain. So let's say, for example, you're the dealership, and you decide that you want to grow your company. So you could grow by becoming the transportation company. So you can either purchase or start your own transportation company. So now, as opposed to just selling cars to end customers, you also make money by delivering the cars to your dealership and possibly to other people's dealerships as well. This would be an example of vertical growth, or in this case, it would be backwards vertical growth. Okay, forward vertical growth would be, for example, say you're the manufacturer and you decide to open up your own dealerships and you're going to sell directly to the customer. So you're not only just manufacturing the product, but you're also going to take on the responsibility of selling the product to the end customer. That would be an example of vertical growth as well, but that would be forward integration. So it's important to know the difference between backwards integration, which is what I explained at first, and then forward integration, which is what I explained secondly. Let's move on. Horizontal growth. This refers to the expansion of a company into other types of companies that are similar. So let's use, for example, here a restaurant. So you own a restaurant, and maybe it's an Italian restaurant, and you decide that you want to grow. And you're going to grow by opening up additional restaurants. So you're going to grow horizontal. You're not going up and down your supply chain. You're going to grow horizontal. You're going to do a similar business in a similar industry, and you're just going to make more restaurants. That's considered horizontal growth. Now that growth can be, I'm going to open up another Italian restaurant on the other side of town. I'm going to open up another Italian restaurant on the north side of town, and I'm going to put an Italian restaurant on the west side of town. So you're experiencing growth, horizontal growth, but you're all growing with the same type of company, the same type of organization. This is what we call concentric diversification, where you're growing, but you're growing into a similar type of business. You're growing horizontal, but you're going into a similar type of business. When you grow horizontal, but you enter into a different kind of business, that's called conglomerate diversification. Let me give you an example. So looking at what we discussed earlier, I'm a restaurant, and I own an Italian restaurant. I decide I want to expand and grow my business. But instead of buying into a restaurant, I actually buy into a car dealership, or I buy into a set of uh, laundry businesses. So yes, I'm expanding my company. My company is growing. There's increased sales growth. And all that. No one could argue that my company is taking in more money than it was before. The difference here is taking that money in from different businesses that are completely unrelated. Now, the benefit of conglomerate diversification is when the economy has a bad spell, it has a depression or a recession, not all of your businesses are going to be affected the same way. You may have some businesses that are still going strong while others are doing poorly. And they help to offset that risk of environmental change through the economy and other sorts of major activities. While concentric diversification, if you're all in Italian restaurants, if something happens and no one wants to go to an Italian restaurant, or the economy changes and no one's going out to eat, your entire business suffers. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about stability strategies. So as I said before, stability strategies are all about trying to keep the status quo going within the organization. To this extent, there are three different stability strategies: pause and receive, no change strategy, and the profit strategy. Pause and proceed is just like it says. You're going to keep doing work as necessary, but then you're going to take a moment to pause. And you're going to fix whatever issues may be going on within the organization. It could be distribution, it could be employee training, any number of things. You'll address those issues, and then you'll come back out and you'll continue to grow as well, or continue to do business as normal. You're going to pause and proceed with caution. You're not going to run out there trying to grow the company. You're just going to take your time and allow organic growth to take place. The no change strategy, this basically means you're doing the same thing you always were going to do. You're not doing any kind of change. So imagine there's a company that did a merger or an acquisition, and the company they just purchased or merged with, they're not going to make any changes to that. They're going to let that company continue to operate as it normally did. It was making money. They were happy with the amount of money it was making, which is why they bought it or merged with it. So they're going to implement a no change strategy. The last one is called a profit strategy. This is called to do nothing. So you may have a company or department or organization that's making lots of money, but it's not growing. Maybe it's even having a little bit of trouble, but it's making money. You decide that you're not going to grow that business. You don't want to stay in that business perhaps. So you're just going to siphon off as much profit as you can from that department, organization, and funnel that money into other areas that are more profitable where you want to put your attention. So we call that a profit strategy. Now let's discuss retrenchment strategies. As I mentioned before, retrenchment strategies need to be put in place when your company is in a relatively weak position or the company is in a failing position. So retrenchment is all about turning the company around or figuring out a good way to liquidate or put the company, to put the company to its end. So turnaround strategies, they emphasize improvement of operational efficiency and fixing whatever the company problems are. It is critical that these problems are fixed so the company can get back on track to start making money and revenue. So first thing people do typically is what's called a contraction. They try to stop the bleeding. Wherever it is that the company is losing all this money, whatever department or area it is, they try to immediately stop the loss. That way as much money stays within the company as possible, and that can be used to fix whatever needs to be fixed and get back out there again. You have consolidation. This is stabilization of the new, leaner organization. So now that we've gone in and we have fixed the problems, we've reduced employees, we have cut out departments that were not making money, we've stopped making products that were just simply costing us money, we're focusing only on things that are profitable for us, we're now going to get out there and get new business. We're going to grow. So we're going to approach this as a much leaner organization. So turnaround strategies involve contraction and then consolidation. Some additional retrenchment strategies are the captive company strategy, the sellout strategy, and divestment. So a captive company strategy is when a company gives up its independence for security. In this scenario, the company may give up all of its operations, all the control that it has, to a larger organization or to maybe a trust company or a turnaround company, and in exchange for security, that company brings in money to stabilize the bills, to pay the customers, to pay your employees, whatever it is that needs to be not pay pay your suppliers, to pay your employees, whatever needs to be done. The company has ongoing security and continuity because it's now attached to somebody else or something else that's stronger than what it is. Sellout strategy. This is when management can still obtain a good price for its shares. So the company hasn't gotten so bad, you can sell the company and you sell out the shares, and the company still survives. People keep their jobs, but you're no longer running the company. Think of this more so as a merger, okay, or an acquisition. So you're selling your company, you're allowing your company to be acquired by another organization. Then you have what's called divestment. This is the sale of a division that has low growth potential. As I mentioned before, sometimes it's a department in the organization that's just losing money hand over fist. Well, what do? You got to stop the bleeding. You may decide to sell off that department. Some company around there may believe that that department still has value and that it's still worth income, and so you just sell that department off to somebody who actually knows what to do and how to fix whatever the problems are. And as far as your organization, you've managed to stop the bleeding, so you're happy and successful with that. Some additional retrenchment strategies are bankruptcy and liquidation. Bankruptcy doesn't necessarily mean that the company is dead, that the company is finished. But no, bankruptcy can mean that if it's attached to a liquidation. But more times out of not, when a company files bankruptcy, what they're really doing is asking the courts for help to deal with their debt. The courts will step in and either absolve the company of its debt, saying, hey, the company's not going to pay these organizations back, and that's okay. There's no legal recourse that those companies can do. They can't sue them to get the money back. Or the courts step in and help the company put together a budget and a plan to repay its creditors at some negotiated amount. So you may owe $100 million to XYZ company. You file bankruptcy, and the bankruptcy court may decide that you can only afford to repay $25 million. And here's a structured plan for repayment. That's what a bankruptcy does. So while Donald Trump has filed bankruptcy a number of different times, it wasn't that he was going out of business. He was actually getting help with paying the debt that the company had. The last one here we have is liquidation. Now, liquidation does mean that the company is going out of business. That company is no longer going to be around. So all assets within the company are being sold primarily to pay off creditors that may be owed. If there are no creditors, then the sale goes back to the shareholders or to the owners of the company, however the particular company is structured. But liquidation does mean, without a shadow of a doubt, that the company is coming to an end and will no longer exist. Well, that wraps it up for the day. Hope that you learned something about strategies in this chapter. If you have any questions, be sure to email me. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.
Nothing can catch you by surprise. You got this figured out, and you're watching us